In the early 1900s, the world was not ready for what was coming. A team of archaeologists found a clay prism buried under the ruins of ancient Nippur. Led by a man named Hermann Hilprecht, this team made a startling discovery in Nippur, present-day Iraq. The clay prism was made of fragments not more than 8 inches tall. But the information on these tablets went on to defy every logic known to man. On this prism, called the Weld-Blundell prism, there was a list, and the list consisted of the names of kings. You heard that right. These kings were no myths or legend stories, but actual rulers recorded in an official tome. What's more interesting, the Weld-Blundell prism had the names of dozens of rulers stretching back thousands of years. In no time, it was called the Sumerian King List. But it was not just the detailed names and descriptions of the kings that shocked scholars. It was the numbers. The tablets show that some of the earliest kings reigned for tens of thousands of years each. If the human lifespan averages 100 years, how was this possible? Does this mean the kings were non-human? If yes, what were they? Look at this. According to the King List, the first 8 rulers governed Earth for a combined 241,200 years. Some reigned for 28,800 years, others for 43,200. One king alone ruled for 36,000 years. But here's the twist. The document transitions smoothly from these impossibly long reigns into names and dates that modern historians can verify. Later kings, like Gilgamesh, have human lifespans and archaeological evidence of their rulership behind them. So, if the second half is real and verifiable, on what basis can we refute the first part of the list? This points to one thing. Perhaps these kings with longer lifespans were divine. But in case you missed it, and you wonder who the Sumerians are, they were one of the earliest civilizations to emerge on Earth. They were said to have lived in the Sumer region in southern Mesopotamia. This is present-day Iraq and Kuwait. Since they were an ancient advanced civilization that reigned between 4100 and 1750 BCE, they had kings who ruled for thousands of years. But the timelines with which their kings ruled come off as eerie, and this is why. For a long time, historians have tried to portray the Sumerians as human-like. Because of this suggestion, one would expect their kings to also have a lifespan similar to humans. But with the Kings List coming to the surface in the early 1900s, all we knew about the Sumerians has been challenged. Why are the reigning years of the first 8 kings unbearably long? As a comeback, historians write off the first 8 kings as symbolic. That is, those kings were just metaphorical storytelling from an early civilization. But why would the Sumerians use mathematically specific reigns to describe fantasy? It makes no sense. It gets more puzzling. Not only the Sumer civilization, but other ancient civilizations, Babylonian, Hindu, Egyptian, all mention rulers who lived for thousands of years before the Great Flood. That's right, the same Great Flood we all know. According to the King List, the Great Flood happened at a conspicuous time. That is, right after the 8th king's reign, the global catastrophe struck. And with the deluge, it wiped away the world. But the timing is interesting as well. At about the same time that the global flood breached the King's List, there is known geological sea level rise, globally. And this was around 10,000 BCE. With such a solid alibi backing the King's List, the question changes. Now, we can't ask, is this mythology? Maybe the real question is, who truly ruled Earth before us? Let's dive into the King's List. Once upon a civilization, before cities rose, before written language came to be, and before wheels were manufactured, there was a city called Eridu. The Sumerians believed it was the very first city ever built. What's more, it was not established by wandering tribes, but by order of the gods. And according to the Sumerian King List, kingship itself didn't evolve from human systems. It descended from heaven. At the center of this divine order stood one name, Alulim. He was the first king of Eridu. But this was not all to King Alulim. The Sumerians dared to say this, that he was the first king of Earth. Ancient tablets describe Alulim as neither a tribal leader nor a warrior chief. Instead, he was portrayed as a figure of extraordinary wisdom and stature, elevated by celestial authority. He was chosen, not born, appointed, not elected. In Eridu, where temple foundations now lie under sand and time, legends say Alulim ruled from a ziggurat that shimmered under the sky. This is a place where heaven touched earth. His kingship marked the dawn of recorded rule, and perhaps this was the golden moment that showed that humanity was no longer alone. If that made you heave a sigh, brace yourself. The King List states that Alulim ruled for 28,800 years. Wait, what? Yes, not 100 or 1,000, but 28,800 years. Modern scholars tried to call a bluff and tag it symbolic. But the Sumerians didn't. They gave precise numbers rounded to the nearest 3,600 years. These weren't exaggerated estimates. They were cycles, patterns. Let's break it down. In Sumerian numerology, the number 3,600 was a base unit called a sar. Alulim's reign equaled exactly 8 sars. To the Sumerians, this wasn't absurd at all. Instead, they viewed it as a cosmic pattern. And when cross-referenced with ancient Hindu, Egyptian, and even biblical genealogies, similar 1,000-year lifespans appear with uncanny frequency. And they always do, before a great global catastrophe. Whether symbolic or literal, these figures reflect a time when rulers were seen as something more. Not fully immortal, no, but they were definitely operating on different biological laws. King Alulim was the first of such bizarre breeds. However, in the 1970s, an author named Zecharia Sitchin introduced a radical idea. Alulim may not have been human at all. Based on his translations of Sumerian texts, Sitchin proposed that kings like Alulim were part of an extraterrestrial race known as the Anunnaki, who came from a distant planet called Nibiru. He argued that these beings started civilization and ruled over humans for tens of thousands of years. Of course, mainstream scholars dismiss his work, but Sitchin's theory still resonated with those who saw too many myths overlapping across cultures. If true, Alulim wasn't just a king, he was our first overlord. After the end of King Alulim's reign, kingship did not return to the sky. It passed to Alalgar, the second ruler of Eridu. According to the Weld Blundell prism, Alalgar governed the earth for an astonishing 36,000 years. This surpassed Alulim's tenure, extending the legacy of divine rule. King Alalgar's reign marked a continuation of an era when kings were not seen as mortals, but as caretakers appointed by forces beyond. But what was King Alalgar's rule like? Ancient Sumerian texts describe Alalgar as a figure of immense power and vision. He's credited with shaping early governance, spiritual order, and city building. Although there is little info about his life in the archaeological record, his name endures in multiple King List variants. However, one thing was certain. Eridu prospered under Alalgar. The city wasn't just a spiritual capital, but it evolved into a center of urban and sacred design. Structures aligned with celestial bodies, temples mirrored constellations. If you think Alulim ignited kingship, Alalgar made an institution of it. King Alalgar didn't descend from heaven. He built heaven on earth, starting with Eridu. But there was a problem with the great king's rule. Upon research, Archaeologists uncovered ancient foundations in Eridu dating back to 5400 BCE, including the remains of what may be the world's oldest temple. But what's strange is the sudden sophistication of it all. The layout, the engineering, the alignment, it suggests prior knowledge. This fuels the theory that Eridu, under kings like Al-Algar, may have functioned as a staging post or even a colonial outpost for non-human intelligence. If you wonder why, you are not alone. Astronaut theorists argue that the architecture, the astronomical placement, and the sheer antiquity of Eridu imply intentional settlement, not evolutionary development like we thought. If Al-Algar's 36,000-year reign was real, then what kind of being could live that long and still have time to build a city? An alien, perhaps. If Al-Algar institutionalized divine rule, then Enmenluana, the third pre-flood king, expanded it, and he did so both in duration and influence. According to the Sumerian King List, Enmenluana ruled for a whopping 43,200 years. That's 12 Sars, a precise Sumerian numeral cycle. This is too deliberate to be fiction. Also, his reign is not recorded in Eridu, but in Bad Tibira, a city equally drenched in mystery. Bad Tibira was said to be the city of the sacred forge. This is the place where divine metalwork and heavenly materials were first introduced to Earth. Enmenluana's reign is linked with metallurgy, order, and production. This hints that his role may have been more industrial than spiritual. Unlike the previous kings, there is no deep mythos around his deeds. However, his name suggests power through crafting. How about his seat of rule? Word carries that it connects directly to the Anunnaki, who, according to ancient law, used Bad Tibira as one of their key operational centers on Earth. There is no doubt, King Enmenluana was the industrial king no Sumerian saw coming. Let's talk about his niche for a moment. In many cultures, metallurgy is divine. The act of forging metal and transforming earth into a tool or weapon. This was a gift only gods could give. In Sumerian myth, the gods who taught mankind how to shape metal were not just artisans. They were beings of fire, star, and stone. Enmenluana's role as ruler of Bad Tibira puts him at the center of that story. And he is not alone. The Greek Hephaestus, the Egyptian Ptah, and even the Hindu Vishvakarman. They all share uncanny similarities with the extraterrestrial archetype Enmenluana seems to represent. One thing was consistent. His forging craft wasn't just physical, it was sacred, just like his 43,200-year reign.